Hey guys, so someone was working on a USP and they were running into some troubles with this shape here in this area. So we're going to play around with the topo for this. It's really quite simple. All we have to do is work with planes to kind of recreate this in a very low poly manner, and then we can go back and refine it more or less. There is a little bit of a trick to it. You need to understand how to work with this top angle perhaps. So that's what we're going to do in this one. Let me go ahead and just go ahead and start hiding some of this stuff here real quick. And then we'll mess around with this. First, we're going to create a plane. Well, bring in your reference image, of course, but create a plane, rotate it as needed so it lines up. So RY90 in my case, I'm going to move it over here, scale it down. All right, we know this surface here, we can look at it, it's flat, right? It's very simple, easy to do. And so it would be nice to have maybe like a front image as well to figure out the exact angle of the slide there at the top where it chamfers. But we got to create that shape basically and then turn it into like this little beveled area. And so a lot of you are going to run into this problem where you try to overcomplicate the subdivision process, right? And it starts more or less with like a simple block out, more of a detailed mesh anyways. So the main idea is to grab the initial shapes and forms that you want to create. In our case, we can see clearly this bottom edge is going to go down to another hard edge down here, right? So we do that. This one over here is going to go up somewhere around there and flush with the slide. We're not worried about the ejection port yet. So you can bring that out to the side if you wanted to see if it lines up correctly. That's fun. Now, what's this next shape doing right here? Oh, actually, excuse me, I skipped a step. Let me go back. It would actually go to here, right? And then extrude up to there. All right. That's what we're looking for. Now, what is this shape doing here in the back? Let's just press E and Y and extrude it out. You can see that point's going to go down to there at some point, right? We can line all this up. And this, let's just turn it into a triangle for now. Okay. And more or less will match the top piece there, except we just have an additional edge. That's it. So we're looking at something like this up here, possibly, perhaps, right? Okay, cool. So we know it's going to have an angle going inwards like this, and we know it's going to want to come out like this as well. Okay. That's the big thing. So like, how do we determine like where this exists and all that other fun stuff? This is what I usually like to do is I'll maybe extrude once, extrude twice on Y. As long as you have a free edge like this, you can hit GG, hold Alt, pull it down. And so GG, bring it up, hold Alt, bring it down, right? And so now we got that angle extended, and that's good because now we can take this here, that back little corner, and we can say like, oh, let's bring it out on X until we barely see it, right? So sometimes you can just eyeball these things. You don't always have to have them perfectly aligned. Subdivision is pretty forgiving in that manner. But yeah, we have it pulled out now. That's awesome. And so you can see where it's lined up right here. Use the machine tools add-on. If you have it, Alt A, align to the left, save you a bunch of trouble. It's a great add-on. Check it out. Get it. All right. We're now done with that section like that anyways. This we can merge out possibly. Not a big deal. We want to align this to the right. We can do that. We'll just delete the rest of that for just a second when we have this shape. Okay. So it's all in alignment now. That's great. Let's finish out the shape. EZ. Extrude it down on Z. Alt A, align bottom. You can see where that's going to be a huge time saver. Add-on. EY. And we have this. This is the mesh you want to create. This is your base mesh, your blocky mesh. And we wouldn't have this originally because of the way we were modeling. I added that just for demo. But this is all you need. Okay. Now the trick is eventually you can see this curves down a little bit. Maybe we add a loop cut in here and just pull it straight down. That's going to work fine here. On this top side, it's not exactly the same thing. If we do that number like that up there, let me dissolve that real quick. Oh, it's going to cut over that triangle, huh? Okay. If we do that up here at the top, let's cut that edge back out actually. And if we try moving that up, you'll see we distort the plane. This is actually going to be a GG. You GG twice, start rocking it in like that. Okay. Okay. Now we have a non-planar face here, and this isn't quite right. Let's take these two, press J, and we can use machine tools and align to the left of this one. Okay. That's going to push both of them in like that. That gives us that little tiny bevel there at the bottom. So basically, once you model that base shape, you're much more free to start refining things. That's the main idea. Okay. So we're on this path now. We're basically making this happen like this. Okay. I'm going to reduce that again. I don't really want that there for now, but this edge here, we can bevel this and this and this. Look at all the edges we can bevel, right? These things. If we hit Control B and start to bevel, mouse wheel up once, use 2 segments, shape of 1, we'll get this kind of result here. Believe it or not, this actually works out quite well to use it in this manner. You can subdivide it right now. It's going to look fine. There's nothing wrong with that topology. I personally don't like this. I like to kind of manually fiddle with things a little bit. So I might bevel this one first, right? And then I might grab this edge all the way through and this one right here, and I might bevel those after. You can see it shifts things around a little bit, but the reason I like this is because I'll go back and I'll like merge at center there. And I'll kind of tweak these things manually. Not that you have to do it this way, but it could be useful to you perhaps, right? So doing it in a different order, like bevels can take place in different orders basically, to get different results more or less. And I just happen to like this one. So, and see, I can also align things as well and keep working it. So yeah, basically refining it at this point. We subdivide it, we get this result. Shade it smooth, boom. Turn off the wireframe so we can see what's going on. By the way, wireframes up here, hotkey or quick favorites it. Just right click, do that for wireframe, but also turn back face culling on so you don't have back faces. It's better to model that way in my opinion. And but yeah, you can see, there you go. We can add additional details later on. Control R, do a loop cut. We hit E, F. We can add like an additional holding edge in here perhaps, or we're going to break up these areas into little nicer squares more or less. That's kind of your optimal subdivision, but you do that kind of last. Like you don't always have to make super dense mesh and have them off the bat like that. But eventually you'll find yourself going to the front with this. I'm just going to loop cut it for now. Something like so anyways. And then you'll end up working the front, doing very similar things, but it's a little bit more challenging perhaps, right? We're not going to do it in this video, unfortunately, but just to establish this base shape is a huge part of the process. And that is ultimately going to be how you end up getting the rest of this all going. And it's very similar process, like this kind of stuff right here. Like you can imagine like, well, that's weighted bevels. That's not what we're looking at, but these are basically, if I break it back down a little bit, it's going to be something like none of this is here. So they're like insets and extrudes. They're nothing really that crazy, but then the edges are beveled at some point. That's all. So this base shape is like this all the way through. Maybe we don't get rid of that one. Yeah. So you can see it's like really simple as you start to break it back down. Just tiny little things. Like if we were to recreate this, we'll just hide it real quick. Hopefully all that stays the same as it was. We'll do that one. Why not? It's kind of simple. So RY 90. Scale it down. We know we're going to work in this area. So the big shape that encompasses everything could be useful. We'll add to it, I think, though. Like right here. Okay. And we're going to have a cut for that one and a cut for this one on both sides of it, right? It can be pretty narrow sometimes. You got to be careful with that. Cut for the top, cut for the bottom. Okay. We're going to cut to the front of this bevel, cut to here. We can pull that down. We can grab these, Alt, Shift, and S and skew it. There you go. You might have to X, Y, or Z when shearing or skewing or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, this is basically the setup here. We put a cut right to the ends of these things, perhaps. Maybe you need 2 cuts to do that. We'll do one for the front. So this is your base shape here for this one, right? Not that one. Okay. And so later on, you could just inset this, hold Control, and then do this, right? This is the opposite of that. So one's a positive space, one's a negative space, right? That's pretty much the same thing for the most part. You might have to fluctuate the base shapes again. A little bit like that. Now the main idea with this one, of course, is if we were to select all of this area in here, select like those boundaries and the corners. Okay, at some point you're going to bevel these more than likely. So you can see how that's going to work out there. So get a hold of these real quick. See, establishing those base primitive shapes first is huge. It's a big part of the process. All right. Make sure I got it all. Sometimes I forget to select some. Yep, look right there, apparently. All right, we bevel it. Mouse wheel up once, profile of 1. And we'll get this kind of thing going here. Okay, if we subdivide this, hit Control 2. Okay, and we set this to keep corners real quick, just so that squares out a little bit better there. You can see what's going on now, though. Like, it's, for the most part, it's working, right? We got to fix some things in here, obviously, but for the most part, it's working. We want to add additional loop cuts, do some things like this, perhaps. It's not that hard. You can hit E and F or E to make things aligned, and then flip which side it's aligned with. You see? You do this step towards the end. Like this one over here, we can't do that because there's an end gone right here. Can't cut across that. So I like to isolate those usually. Let's just do KCA, use a knife cut real quick. Boom, just like that. We can just run those ones out, more than likely to the ends here, possibly. In this case, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. It's too far. So I'll KCA all the way across like that. And then connect it to there. A little bit more squared up, I think, works better so they match each other. But yeah, you can see where this is going now. Like, we're going to make little squares everywhere, not rectangles, hopefully. Sometimes getting the balance right can be a little bit challenging, I would say, but it's not too bad usually. All right. Anyways, yep, subdivide that. There you go. Same process. It starts very simple. The refinement takes the most time usually. Nailing out the key, shape, form should be one of the quicker things you do. Detailed block out if you want to look at it like that. But once you've done that, I mean, you can really just go to town and just have a lot of fun with it. I mean, this is going to turn into what I more or less I already had modeled basically at this point. This is just a cylinder with some bevels basically, right? The Neuralink I'll get into a video later on, but this is just the same process. It's a little bit more interesting because there's a bit of a curve to it. And there's supposed to be a flat side here at the top, and it bends out in this direction, which makes it a little bit challenging. But this is almost identical to this over here, except once again, it has a little bit of a curve to it at the back, but it's very similar in nature, right? So you can play around with these things and really push them, basically. You can come up with things very fast, almost no problem. As far as like the ejection port goes, like this is just almost a cutout. This is pretty much what's taking place there. So let me just do another one kind of right here. You can imagine that you're cutting to a midpoint and then cutting to a midpoint and redirecting, something like that. All of that's going to be taken away, connected. There's no real challenge there. You just have to match the curvature. You can see I didn't cut all those out apparently. Let's try that again. So you press K and C, cut through the top half there. Okay, join those, grab all this in the middle, delete, and that would be the start of your ejection port. You'd have to work the other side, kind of custom, but eventually it's kind of the same idea. Like you would probably have to extend it down, and maybe you cut short, maybe you go right to an edge. It's up to you, but like you're probably going to cut short. And you can see like we could definitely keep rocking this further down. Even down onto the side over here if needed. Get rid of our excess. So later on when you have little shape changes, if you have enough resolution, which I don't think we have quite enough, but we're close, we could probably keep adding additional little interesting kind of cuts into areas. But we would have to at some point. What's going on there with that one? Oh, that's the other piece. Okay. Let me hide that. It's in the way. Yeah, so we eventually could cut other little additional elements as needed. Sometimes these pistols have little sections like this, but this would also need potentially bevels in these areas, right? So you got to be careful when you start taking it up in resolution. It's bound to happen that you're going to need more resolution. In which case, if you have a really good base subdivision mesh, you do like a level 1 subdivision, and you should be able to apply it and you'll have more resolution to work with. So before cutting those out, sometimes you want to wait until that step takes place. This is like your more of your tertiary detail area, right? So you're going to maybe bring that resolution up, apply it. And your topology, if it's not really perfect from the start and it's supporting things like this, like you need to think about what you're cutting in later on, perhaps. This is, you'll have a lot of struggle here, basically, if you don't get it set up just right from the start. But you can see that's going to work out pretty well, I think. Oh, did I even apply the subdivision? It doesn't look like I did. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Who knows? Let's do another subdivision then. All right. We work with this? Yeah. You definitely work with this. You see, like, little rectangles become very small little rectangles if you're not careful. On the holding edges, this is usually pretty common, but a lot of times you can reduce these back down as well on the holding edges, so it's not like a big deal. You can usually find a loop cut that you can grab and just start reducing them back down, perhaps doing things like that, right? So it's not impossible to reduce and work higher and lower at the same time, right? And isolate kind of the topology in different little areas. But nonetheless, yeah, we pretty much more or less, and a lot of times you can get away with just shifting things now as well. So like if you want to just do shifts and then do that, that's fine. Might not always need to do an additional holding edge or another bevel to hold this area. If it's high enough density, you don't always need it. But you can see how that starts to work out, right? It'll be curved because, well, we don't have enough density perhaps in that area. Once again, do local. And this is where your reductions start to take place, right? Like maybe that'll be fine there. Maybe it pinches a little bit in ways we don't want it to. It's a possibility, but for the most part, it might work. This one over here will dissolve that. We'll attach that to that. That might kind of skew it a little bit in ways we don't want. Maybe we can balance it out a little better, right? And now this is that next step, right? So I'm going to merge those out here. Oop. Out here. I'm trying to merge them out here like this. It's too far though. But you can also do things like that, in which case you didn't notice I already kind of did that on the back section here. Where I had a bunch of stuff like that going on. This is the end result of that after the subdivision was applied. So patterns like that, you model one piece and you array it and then combine it to the base shape here. But for the most part, you can see, yeah, we can start to sharpen up these little edges like that. You know, if it's supposed to be slightly curved, obviously, you know, you have freedom to push things around a little bit and balance things out. Don't forget to balance things and just really kind of shift it in the ways you need it to go. Right. And so here's another one. I would probably run this one down right here and run this one over so I can control that curve. And I'll just go ahead and you can convert these kind of back and forth if needed as well. Like you can just keep switching things up, you know, just seeing them if a different kind of pattern for holding a corner might work better, you know, or a different type of reduction or whatever the case. Like this one here is going like the three verts just merged to make a triquad. Maybe we do something different. Maybe we do like a K knife cut over to here. And maybe we do this instead and we pull them out like that. Like you're creating basically an inset more or less, right? So would that work better in that area? It's all flat, so it doesn't really matter, I think, but it might, who knows? Maybe you need a detail there for some reason and you have to do that. I mean, that's a possibility. Maybe there's a little nonsense up here or something. You see what I'm getting at? Yeah, so all those topology fundamentals, super important. There's not really I would say advanced topology necessarily. I would say there's just hard topology to work with, but not advanced. The rules and the fundamentals are all pretty simple. End pulls, E pulls, insets, right? Extrusions and insets or extrusions. Don't overcomplicate it. Start with those basic primitive shapes. Start to work with the topology, trying to create the kind of edge flows you want and doing the additional cuts. And before you know it, it starts to click as you model more and more things. You'll be able to tackle rather complex stuff like it's nothing. Like this is nothing really by the end of it. But When you start doing really curvy, organic type shapes that have a lot of detail in them, that's when things get a little bit more interesting. I'll be talking about some of that stuff more on the channel in the future. But for now, hard surface, subdivision modeling, this is the name of the game right here for the most part, until you start doing, the curvier hard surface stuff, I guess, right? Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will check you out in the next one. All right, take care.